Greetings, brothers and sisters from the four corners of the world. I hope everyone is having a blessed morning, afternoon, evening in your prospective lands. All right, all right, all right. Here we go with The War on the True Promise, Part 18, A Mystery No More, Part 2. This one's going to be very interesting. Okay. So, in the last lesson, we broke down beginning to understand the United States, right? And the things that was going on with what we see today, along like the invasions of uh, Venezuela, and just really seeing how this is the time to do things for yourself in regards to putting yourself at advantage because we know the prophecy, right? I want you to think about it. We went over in Ecclesiastes 3, right? Time, right? We went over time, and we spoke about what does a man gain for the efforts that he makes. Imagine us having this truth, brothers and sisters. Imagine us having this knowledge and not making it to the end, not enduring to the end. Okay, so as we move forward, please let that be a very focal point of your life moving forward. How am I going to adapt to the prophecies or to adapt to the knowledge so that I don't have to get taken off guard by the prophecies, right? Very, very important, brothers and sisters. Very, very important. We're going to talk about that today. All right. Now, I did want to we I left off with really exposing to you all about this being the emphasis. Second Ezra 15 through 16, where it said, "For there shall be sedition among men, invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power." And we saw just exactly what was said, whether Trump saying whether they like it or not. You know, he doesn't have to go by international law. And you see right now eh, um, the things that's going on in and I think it was to speak at the time in Los Angeles in the United States, them protesting for uh, um, Iran, and then the whole thing with the ice and things of that nature. Um, and sadly enough, it's all kind of like to their own detriment for those who are out there because once again, right, we go back to this scripture and the scripture will never fail us. What does a man gain for the efforts that he makes? So think about, right? If you know that these people are in charge, year after year, every 4 years, every 10 years, every year, there's an evil person in charge. Someone cares more about the next person than the other. There's bombs dropped, and that's unfortunate, and it's a terrible thing, right? But what does the protesting do? What do you get out of that? When I was in Ethiopia, um, I met a brother, and it was at the time where the whole uh, Trayvon Martin situation happened in I think it was in Sanford, Florida, and he was saying, "Well, I just feel like I'm supposed to be there, like I'm supposed to make a difference." And I'll never forget those words. And I sit there and think, like, going back with this scripture, what exactly did you do that was going to make a difference. And I think that's the problem, right? Instead of making a difference on a global scale as far as like a platform, right? People want to go out and protest and tell the governments and this and that. You see, you notice how Christ, what he did, he didn't go at the government, he went at the people. There's a difference, right? He went to say, there's nothing I can do with the people in power unless they come to me. Because he was able to, you know, change the minds of Romans and priests and so forth. But they had to come to him. But naturally, Christ went to people who he knew wanted help. Keep that in mind. So do not what I say is this, brothers and sisters. There has to be a reason, right? And maybe I should play this video, right? And I thought this was really interesting because this is a comedian, right? This is a British Nigerian comedian, but he dresses like an officer. I don't know if he's had, prior military service, but he's a comedian and he has this flag and stuff like that. But he's a comedian, okay? Like he's a real comedian. I looked him up. But listen to the message, okay? Listen to the message that's being given. Oh, wait, what happened to Mosai? Okay, here we go with the issues now. Huh? Let's try another avenue here, brothers and sisters. Let's do it this way because I like to do it.
This is a message to the American people. Greetings from Baghdad, Laughter Republic.
Now
This
there,
is a message.
now really, there's no Laughter Republic by him. But I don't think many people knew that, but they were just taking his message. Okay, so check this out.
This is a message to the American people. Greetings from Baghdad, Laughter Republic. The proud people of America, the greatest country on earth. Everything is collapsing in your country. You have now become a laughing stock where 1% is getting richer and the remaining percentage is getting poorer. Some citizens are walking around the streets of America like zombies due to drugs. You cannot continue to live like this. It's not fair on you and your children. We are the greatest producers of eggs. For 200 years, you have been denied human rights, freedom of speech. Don't let your leaders get away with it. Be brave, dare to dream. This is your time, American people. It is your time. Seize the opportunity. We can help you if you want. With good food, which will prepare you for freedom. Good drinks, which will prepare you for freedom. Good luck, American people. You deserve better.
Now, despite this is just a comedy, but it's a comedian, but he's not over any country, right? And I sat and I asked the Most High when I saw this. I said, Most High, what is this supposed to mean? I mean, obviously, like we understand, people from the outside, anyone who steps outside the U.S. can see what the U.S. looks like. The U.S. is like when you're inside, it's like an auditorium kind of, right? And the auditorium, you got the seats and the stage, right? And there's something always happening. That's on the inside of the United States. But on the outside, well, you know, let me let me try and put it this way. It's like if anyone has ever, and I'm not downing anyone for living in apartments. I've lived in apartments all my life, but like if anyone has seen like where they do like the apartment trash, right? And they have the dumpster, right? Now some dumpsters can be clean on the outside, but in the inside, obviously, it's dirty, right? Because the dumpster is dirty, it's full of trash. So what Americans think they look like on the inside, they think it's on the outside. They think that just because they see nice things on the inside, they think that's what people think of them on the outside. But America is really that dumpster. You may think it looks nice on the outside, it may appear clean, but on the inside, it's full of the worst of things. And I hope, I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just talking about the garbage, not the place or the people or anything of that nature. I don't want anyone to say I'm trying to belittle anyone because I'm not. Okay. But at some point, you see these messages, and I said to the Most High, what does this mean? And I promise you, I prayed for a couple of days and I asked the Most High, could you share with me, Most High? Please, you don't have to share with me anything, but could you, guide me in the way to understand what is going to happen because so many people want to leave, right? The United States. And speaking of that, I want to make something very, very clear, okay? To the African countries that are, and I want to pull up the 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 article before I even say it. Okay. To the African countries that are banning, it says, why are some African countries banning U.S. citizens from entry? So Mali and Burkina Faso, okay, issued, they say supposedly this tit for tat. And I was almost certain that they banned Americans first before Donald Trump banned African countries, right? Now, if we're going to play the historical role, right? Get ready now. Get ready for this. If we go with the historical role that Africans sold Black Americans and Hispanic Americans into slavery, okay, if we go with that narrative, wouldn't that be equivalent to banning people from returning to freedom? Wouldn't that be the equivalent? So this country is bad. These people, your brothers and sisters, suffer in America, and you are going to ban them from freedom. Isn't that the same exact thing? And I'm going to let you know this, they won't be the last two African countries to do so. They will not be. But with saying that, I do believe at some point the Most High is going to say, hey, I'm going to have nations give you a warning. You know what's going to be the warning? The warning is going to be you're going to have to look out and see who's going to welcome you. Okay. And for people who may say, yeah, Ghana just also said they changed the citizenship status. So I think it was 5 to 10 years, and now it's only 2 to 3 years. So if you're coming out, you have 2 to 3 years to stay, and then you got to go or renew it or however the process goes. And if you've ever been out of the country, renewing visas on your own, it ain't light work, especially in Africa. And I speak because I've lived in Africa. Especially in Africa. Have mercy. Bribery is just like drinking a cup of water. It's natural in Africa, sad to say. But going back to what I was saying, right? You understand that America and the Americas, Central and South America, you know there's a country in South America that if you don't vote, you go to jail. Did you know that? I can't remember which country it is. It's one of the Central or South American countries. Did you know if you don't vote, you get imprisoned? Like, why do I have to vote? Think about that. Showing you that something's not right with that system. None of these voting systems. But anyway, right? So there are people, our African brothers and sisters, see that there's an issue in the United States. See, everyone can see in the world that the people of America, a lot of them, especially the children of Israel that's there, they want to leave. But then you start closing off things. Wouldn't that make it right? So once again, I go to say this back in the scripture. What does a man gain for the efforts that he makes? Make sure, brothers and sisters, when you are doing things, understand time is against me. Time is against you. Time is against us all. Make sure everything that you do, getting something out of it for the future, for the benefit of the future. Now, continuing this. This was a very interesting video.
Hello, dear brothers and sisters. Hello, dear parents. Before I begin, I would like to.
Now, this was a 9-minute video. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'm going to share with you. And you know, I don't necessarily. I think it's wrong to block people who are looking for freedom, but in the same token, I understood when he was making this comment, right? But because so much everyone's looking at Iran and seeing how Iran, they got infiltrators like it's nothing. I mean, wow. I seen articles of them blowing up fire trucks. They are beating police officers, firefighters, a nurse. They went in the hospitals, and the nurses are coming out to give aid to the people. They lit nurses on fire. Kids were coming out of a mosque. They setting kids on fire with Molotov cocktails. Like, that's not when you letting certain people in your country, even though those are infiltrators, because we sit there and look, right? Iran hasn't had such an uproar since. Uh, Remember when the Americans were in there? I mean, they've had protests and stuff, but not to this not to this level, right? Not to this destruction. They're burning down the mosques. They're burning down the shrines. Mind you, okay, I want you to know they got a shrine, and I don't believe in shrines, but the shrine they believe in, right, is They got, and you can look this up. The shrine is just nothing but a burial site, okay? And people go there, they touch the thing and stuff. They believe, I don't believe in the touching and stuff, but it's just a burial site. They got a burial site for Esther. They got a burial site for John. They got a burial site for Daniel. They got a burial site for Mordecai. I mean, they have a burial sites for the prophets of the Bible, for those who live there, and they're being destroyed. This is not normal. Okay. So I can understand in his sense, he's like, hey, Americans are not to be trusted. And you know what? Eh, I kind of get it. But he's preparing for something. What is he preparing for?
Apologize to the people of the Sahel who were waiting for us yesterday. But God willed it to be today, and here we are. We give thanks for all the blessings and for this wonderful day as we have gathered here in Bamako for the second session of the College of Heads of State of the AES Confederation. I would also like to pay a very special and heartfelt tribute to our incredibly brave and dedicated fighting forces who are consistently doing truly tremendous and exceptionally vital work on the ground, tirelessly dedicating themselves to their crucial mission, and thanks to whom we are able to gather here today to come together in the name of our people. I would like to apologize once again. To those whom my words might offend, I apologize, because I won't sugarcoat things. We are going to address words that only mimic prayer. You have all certainly heard of the significant and impactful Arab Spring, that profound phenomenon which dramatically shook the entire geopolitics of the Arab world, commencing from the Maghreb region in Africa all the way across to Asia, which manifested itself with often disastrous consequences, deaths and divisions in some places, and unprecedented political upheavals in others. And I think that all Africans should understand what this phenomenon is, where it comes from, and what needs to be done to protect themselves from such a phenomenon. Unfortunately, we regret to note that some Africans are not waking up. And what I want to say is just my own thought, my analysis, which is that there is something coming to West Africa that I have called the Black Winter. The Black Winter is coming. It will be a very, very cold winter indeed, a truly bloody winter, a profoundly deadly winter. You might understandably ask me why. Well, let me explain. When we founded the AES Confederation, we felt this cold coming. And every day that God gives us, we strive to find logs to light a fire that will warm the hearts of Africans, a fire that will warm the minds and the blood of Africans so we can unite around it. We have also made every effort to charge at the wolf, to try to use their skin, to make coats to protect ourselves from the cold of winter. We have strived to build mountains, great mountains, to break the winter wind that would otherwise fall upon our communities. Unfortunately, it must be acknowledged that some Black people are there every day, watering our logs with fresh water so they can't burn. They turn into wolves to make sure that we, the wolf seekers, cannot catch the wolf by surprise. When we want to build our mountains, they break the stones so that we cannot succeed. Yet winter is coming. And when winter comes, should we allow those who fought against us to come seek shelter with our coats that we made, the mountains we built to protect ourselves from the winds, or even to warm themselves with us around the fire? That is the question we must ask ourselves. So what will become of Pan-Africanism when winter comes? Winter will come because war is spreading to West Africa. The imperialists are doing everything they can to set West Africa ablaze. But from the highest levels of the state to certain segments of the population, either we pretend not to see the danger coming, or we ourselves are complicit in what is about to happen. Chaos could take hold. I said could take hold. A lot of people could die. We will slaughter each other in such a horrific way that during that time, they will be there looting our resources and imposing their will. And those who survive this tragedy will have only two choices. Either unite forever against imperialism or resign themselves to being slaves until they disappear.
Now we're going to stop it there. I know you're like, oh, play the whole thing. Nope. Now, something is happening, right? And he said West Africa, but truly all of Africa, is going to go to war. All of Africa is going to go to war. And notice he said something really interesting, right? He said something about people are going to be killing each other. And he's talked about the Arab Springs. Now, and how they kind of imperialism and taking land divides and things of that nature. Now, what is he talking about? We're going to expose today. Okay, so we're going to start from verse 16 again, and I'm going to peel this back like an onion, and it is going to blow your mind. It reads, "For there shall be seditions among men, invading one another." So he's talking about imperialists, right? Imperialism. He's talking about the Arabs. He's talking about people taking the resources and having people fight amongst others. Now, showing you this tactic is not new. They see what's happening in Iran. They see what's happening in the US, what's happening in Europe, what happened in Australia, what's happening in Venezuela, and many other places. They putting people against each other while they're doing backdoor deals. So while you fighting, while you doing this, while you surviving, someone else is doing something 20 times worse that'll affect you when you survive. They shall not regard their kings nor princes in the course of their actions, shall stand in their power. A man shall desire to go into a city, and shall not be able to, not be able. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. So we see all this invading and going into one country into another. This leads up to what? A famine, a famine, a famine, a lack of necessities, bread, food, water. All of this is going to lead to, hey, well, this is my country. I'm not sharing it anymore. Do for your own, do for yourself. And for great tribulation. Behold, saith God, I will call together all the kings of the earth to reverence me, which are from the rising of the sun from the east, from the south, from the east in Libanus, to turn themselves one against another and repay the things that they have done to them. So now what you see is what? Tribal wars. So the Most High is going to turn nations against each other. Come on now. And so many people have looked at Africa in a bad light. Africa is a beautiful place. But so many people have looked at Africa as, oh, the tribal and the village and blah, 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 right? And though there may have been some tribal issues, I mean, that's also in the Arab nations as well, that's going to spread and spread and spread out of control. Nations are going to go against each other. I mean, look what's happened in Saudi and Yemen. Now the Arabs, the Saudi, is attacking the UAE soldiers in Yemen. And that wasn't what was before. Before they were working together. Change of heart. Places are going to start turning on each other. Continuing, it reads, like as they do yet this day unto my chosen, so will I do also and recompense their bosom. Thus saith the Lord God. Now, you understand the UAE doesn't allow a certain African nations, most of the African nations in their country. Do you know that? Isn't that strange? It's just like a remember that movie Elysium? But I think it was like Matt Damon and Judy, whatever her name is. But right, and they were trying to go into space where just the rich people can go, right? Just the well-off people. Now, I'm not saying everyone in the UAE is well off because they got some really bad areas that they hide and censor. But all that gold, and you know darn well that all that gold don't come from that small land. It came from somewhere. It came from Sudan. So what happens when the Most High says, as you've done to others, I'm going to make it done to you? Mm, 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 mm. What do you think people are going to do? They're going to fight for the gold. They're going to fight for the money. They're going I'm going to show you why too. You may not believe me, but that whole Middle East, what they call, we're not finished. We're going to get there. The Most High says, like as they do yet this day unto my chosen, so will I do also, and recompense in their bosom. Thus saith the Lord God, my right hand shall not spare the sinners, and my sword shall not cease over them that shed innocent blood upon the earth. Fire is gone forth from his wrath, and hath consumed the foundations of the earth, and the sinners like the straw that is kindled. Woe to them that sin and keep not my commandments, saith the Lord. I will not spare them. Go your way, ye children, from the power, defile not my sanctuary. For the Lord knoweth all them that sin against him, and therefore delivereth him unto death and destruction. For now are the plagues come upon the whole earth, and ye shall remain in them. For God shall not deliver you, because you have sinned. You have sinned against God. And you know what I was thinking as I was reading, right? There's when I finished reading the Quran, I was also reading their hadiths, right? You know, everyone knows that, and even Muslims understand this as well, that everything in the hadith is not to be like taken. You know, there's some very questionable things. Okay, but you use it kind of like a measure as studying and say, okay, you get what is there. Okay, and one of the hadiths talks about during the end times there would be gold. Now I know their prophecy says, I think it was a mountain of gold, right? I think in Arabia or Iraq, somewhere there. But you see, I'm not sure if that's referring to those areas, because if you think about it, the only country in the Middle East that showcases such accessible gold, mind you, I said accessible gold, okay, is the UAE. And in this hadith, it said that no one is to touch this gold, or else you would perish. Now, I wonder why someone would perish for touching gold. Maybe because how they got it? Because that would make sense, wouldn't it? Oh, never mind. Shh, let's not talk about that. But anywho, so going back to the Captain Ibrahim, his name is Captain Ibrahim or Abraham, right? They abandon people. He says there's a dark winter. And he mentioned the Arab nations, right? Now, what is interesting is this is gonna be a world. I'm letting you know. Okay. This is gonna be a world. Because what we know as the Middle East and the Arab Springs is just Qatar, KSA, the Kingdom of Saudi, Iraq, Kuwait, Syria, Lebanon. That's what they coin in those places. Even Egypt, right? And the truth is going to come out. You ready? Why would the Africans say that there's going to be war and it's going to come to the Arabs? Well, because somebody's doing some backdoor evil. And you may ask, what evil is that? Now, let's see. Once upon a time, there was a map that was created by a man named Sykes and Picot, who remade the Middle East for British and French control. You may ask, what happened, right? Well, let me tell you. This is what happened. Here's a video. Fair use. Oh, wait, let's see if I have to. Refresh it. One moment, please. Get this video.
At first glance, the borders of the Middle
Okay, here we go, brothers and sisters. A little video for y'all. Check this out.
At first glance, the borders of the Middle East seem like any other, lines on a map shaped by geography, culture, maybe even language. But that's not what happened. The modern Middle East was created in the aftermath of a war that destroyed empires, and in their place, it left behind a set of fragile, unnatural boundaries, drawn by people who had never set foot in the region. What followed was a century of instability, war, and fractured identities, all rooted in decisions made behind closed doors. This is the story of how the modern Middle East was carved from betrayal, deception, and colonial ambition. When the war broke out in 1914, Europe became a battlefield. But the tremors shook the entire world. On one side were the Allied powers, Britain, France, and Russia. On the other stood the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. What started as a regional conflict over a political assassination quickly metastasized into the first truly global war, thanks to colonial empires that stretched across continents. For the Ottoman Empire, once a sprawling Islamic caliphate that controlled large swaths of the Middle East, North Africa, and Eastern Europe, the war came at a precarious time. Long nicknamed the sick man of Europe, the empire was bleeding internally. Nationalist movements were rising among Arabs, Armenians, and Kurds. Infrastructure was decaying. The military was outdated. The economy was in shambles. But strategically, the Ottomans still held massive territory, especially in the Arab world. and their alliance with Germany made them a threat the Allies couldn't ignore. But more than just territory was at stake. The British and French had their eyes on resources, namely oil, which had become essential for fueling modern warfare. Control of the Middle East meant control of energy. Add to that the region's crucial trade routes, like the Suez Canal, and the stakes became even higher. When the Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers, the war expanded to include the Middle East. The British began considering how to undermine Ottoman control from within, and how to carve up the region afterward. But from the start, imperial interest was wrapped in moral language. Promises of freedom and self-rule were made not as ends in themselves, but as bargaining chips. Meanwhile, Arab nationalists had their own vision. Many hoped the war would be their chance to finally break free of imperial rule, Ottoman or otherwise, and establish a sovereign Arab state. But they were stepping into a game that was rigged before it began. World War I didn't just destroy old empires, it created a vacuum, and the powers who filled it did so with treaties, betrayals, and borders that would ripple through the next century. Enter the Arabs. Many Arab leaders, particularly Sharif Hussein of Mecca, had long chafed under Ottoman rule. The British saw an opportunity. In a series of secret letters between 1915 and 1916, known as the McMahon-Hussein Correspondence, the British promised Hussein an independent Arab kingdom if he led a revolt against the Ottomans. Arab fighters, including the now iconic Lawrence of Arabia, joined the effort. They blew up trains, attacked supply lines, and fought a guerrilla war alongside British forces, all the while believing that after the war they would rule themselves. But there was a problem. Even as Britain promised the Arabs independence, it was cutting a very different deal. In 1916, the British and French drew up a secret agreement, known as the Sykes-Picot Agreement. It was named after the two diplomats who drafted it, Sir Mark Sykes of Britain and François-Georges Picot of France. This agreement carved up the Ottoman Empire into British and French spheres of influence. France would control modern-day Syria and Lebanon. Britain would take modern-day Iraq, Jordan, and a strong influence over Palestine. The Arabs would get nothing. This agreement wasn't public at the time. The Arab leaders fighting for their freedom had no idea that, behind their backs, European powers were already dividing the spoils. And then came a leak. When the Bolsheviks took power in Russia, they exposed the agreement to the world. Arab leaders were furious. As if double-dealing the Arabs wasn't enough, Britain made yet another promise during the war. In 1917, Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour wrote a letter expressing British support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. This was the Balfour Declaration. It was one sentence, but it changed everything. The letter was addressed to Lord Rothschild, a leader in the British Jewish community, and it was meant to gain support from Zionist Jews in Britain and America for the war effort. But here's the catch. Britain had now promised the same land to two different groups. To the Arabs, they had promised independence across the Middle East, including Palestine. To the Jews, they promised a national home in that very same land. This contradiction would set the stage for over a century of conflict. The war ended, the Ottoman Empire collapsed, and the victors began to reshape the region. Rather than granting independence, the League of Nations established mandates, a polite term for colonies. Britain took control of Palestine, Transjordan, and Iraq. France took Syria and Lebanon. These mandates were presented as a form of stewardship. In practice, they were outright imperial control. Arab revolts broke out in Syria, Iraq, and Palestine. The British and French crushed them. This wasn't just a betrayal of promises, it was the institutionalization of a lie. The people of the region were told they weren't ready to rule themselves, that they needed guidance, civilization. What many received instead were broken promises, foreign-backed regimes, and decades of unrest. The image of Western nations as liberators began to unravel. What had started as political resentment grew into something deeper, generational disillusionment. One of the most enduring legacies of this era was the drawing of modern borders. These borders often had no relation to ethnic, religious, or tribal realities on the ground. They split communities and forced others together. Iraq, for instance, lumped together Sunni Arabs, Shia Arabs, and Kurds under a single British-backed monarchy. Syria was split into multiple sectarian states before being jammed back together. Lebanon was carved out specifically to give Maronite Christians a majority. These were not borders created for stability. They were borders created for convenience, for control. And they created pressure cookers that would explode again and again throughout the 20th century. The consequences of these lies are still playing out to this day. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is perhaps the most visible and enduring legacy of Britain's conflicting promises. The 1917 Balfour Declaration supported the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, a region where the vast majority of the population was Arab. At the same time, Britain had already promised Arab leaders that they would support Arab independence, including in Palestine, if they revolted against the Ottomans. These contradictory pledges created deep confusion and resentment. When the British Mandate took over after World War I, the influx of Jewish immigrants, many fleeing anti-Semitic violence in Europe, accelerated. Tensions between Jewish and Arab communities escalated into violence. Arab uprisings were met with brutal crackdowns. British authorities found themselves caught in a trap of their own making, unable to appease either side. This unresolved conflict would eventually explode into civil war, the creation of Israel in 1948, and the ongoing struggle that continues to dominate Middle Eastern politics today. Before European intervention, identities in the Ottoman Middle East were often defined more by religion, tribe, or locality than by national borders. But the Sykes-Picot Agreement and later mandates carved the region into artificial states with little regard for ethnic or sectarian realities. Iraq, for example, was stitched together from three very different Ottoman provinces: a Sunni center, a Shiite south, and a Kurdish north. Syria, too, was a patchwork of religious and ethnic groups, from Alawites and Druze to Christians and Sunni Arabs. Colonial powers didn't just draw the borders, they also picked favorites. In Iraq, the British installed a Sunni monarchy over a Shiite majority, sowing deep divisions. In Syria, the French empowered minority groups like the Alawites to help control the majority, which only intensified resentment and distrust. These decisions laid the groundwork for future coups, civil wars, and sectarian violence. The power struggles in modern Iraq and Syria are not just modern issues. They are echoes of borders that never fit the people forced to live inside them. The Kurds, an ethnic group numbering over 30 million, were promised independence after World War I. The 1920 Treaty of Sèvres included provisions for a possible Kurdish state, but that promise was abandoned just 3 years later in the Treaty of Lausanne, which made no mention of Kurdish autonomy. As a result, the Kurds were divided across 4 newly formed states: Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. In each of these countries, they were treated with suspicion, often denied cultural rights, and in some cases brutally repressed. In Iraq, for instance, the Kurds faced repeated chemical attacks under Saddam Hussein. In Turkey, Kurdish identity was for decades denied outright, and the use of the Kurdish language was banned in public spaces. To this day, the Kurds remain one of the largest stateless nations in the world, a direct consequence of the way the post-Ottoman world was divided. The Middle East was not just shaped by foreign powers, it was scarred by them. For many Arabs, the post-war period came to symbolize betrayal on a grand scale. They had shed blood in the hope of independence, only to see their lands turned into mandates, their leaders sidelined, and their futures dictated from abroad. The resentment that took root wasn't simply about territory, it was about broken promises and the humiliation of being treated as pawns in a larger imperial game. That sentiment did not disappear with the end of colonial rule. It mutated, deepened, and passed from one generation to the next. What began as anti-imperial frustration has fueled everything from pan-Arab nationalism to extremist ideologies. From the Suez Crisis to the rise of militant groups, many of the region's most volatile flashpoints are tethered to a shared memory of deception and domination. These aren't just historical footnotes, they are the structural foundations of modern geopolitics in the Middle East. When people ask why there is so much instability in the region, the answer is often made to seem simple: tribalism, extremism, oil. But the deeper truth is far older. It's written in old telegrams, secret maps, and imperial deals. We already explored the promises Britain made to the Arabs during the war, promises of independence in return for their rebellion against the Ottomans. But to fully understand just how foundational that betrayal was, we need to revisit the Arab Revolt. Not just as a wartime event, but as the point where the illusion of liberation began to shatter. Sharif Hussein, leader of the Arab Revolt, received little in return for his alliance with the British. His sons were installed as monarchs, Faisal in Iraq, Abdullah in Jordan, but these were British-controlled mandates, not independent kingdoms. Hussein himself was eventually exiled. The Hashemite dynasty still rules in Jordan, but the broader vision of a united Arab state never materialized. It died at the Paris Peace Conference, where Arab voices were sidelined in favor of European interests. The betrayal of the Arab Revolt became more than just a broken promise. It became a symbol. a moment that crystallized the fear that liberation movements in the region would be used, then discarded. That legacy didn't fade. It echoed through revolts, nationalist movements, propaganda, and textbooks, each telling a different version of who was betrayed and by whom. Today, the map of the Middle East looks clean, with straight lines and sharp corners. But those lines bleed. They run through ancient cities, across tribal lands, over holy sites. And when war breaks out, whether in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, or Gaza, it's not just about religion or politics. It's about who drew the line and who has to live with it. It's about who made the deal and who paid the price. The modern Middle East wasn't born. It was engineered, not by the people who lived there, but by men who never set foot in the deserts or mountains or coastal cities they divided. They lied. They made promises they never intended to keep. And with every broken promise, every artificial border, they set fires that still haven't gone out. If we want to understand the Middle East today, we can't just look at the headlines. We have to look at the maps, the letters, the lies. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon in history is a pen.
Well, so now you understand a little bit. And I'm going to break it down, and you're probably still wondering, well, what does that still have to do with Africa? Now, here's the thing, right? So first things first. We understand that these maps, these countries were created by this deal, this Sykes-Picot, okay? This agreement, all right? 1916 secret treaty. All right? So they outlined, okay, just like the video said, the UK would be in control of, you know, southern Israel, Palestine, Jordan. That's why they answer to all these people in the UK and to the Queen, and they're kissing their hands. And you saw how the video stated that all of these leaders, for the most part, they're all family. You know, that's why there's no big tribal wars or going to war with each other, with the exception of Yemen, right? So they're all doing these backdoor deals. France was to control Turkey, Kurdistan region, Syria, Lebanon, right, and so forth and so forth, right? So while the people in the so-called Middle East think that they are, you know, free and it's their country, you know, some people are claiming to be things that they are not. Okay. Now, with that being said, let's go back to this, right? And so this was kind of just like the video, and it gave a, you know, understanding. They came out with the outlines of Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Saudi, Qatar, so forth and so forth, right? Now, why would there be war? I want you to think real quick. Just think for a second. Why would the Africans mention the Arabs? Okay. Why would they mention the Arabs? And what does the Arabs have to do with Africa? Okay, enough thinking. So, 2022, the invention of the Middle East. What is the Middle East? Why is it the Middle East? To whom is it east? We should take into consideration, let me blow this up a little bit. We should take into consideration that what is east to certain geographical location is west to another. Thus, Turkey, Iran, Russia are east of Europe, but they are west of Japan. What we know as the Middle East is actually the Middle West of Japan. In Orientalism, Edward Said argued that the Orient was a Western invention made to be exploited by the Europeans. They seem to be everywhere. For the Europeans, the world is made of two unequal halves, Orient and Occident. And the relationship between Orient and Occident is the relationship of power and of domination of varying degrees of complex hegemony. The East for European, Western for historians, scholars, researchers, leaders, artists, merchants, and traders was a career. This argument is clear if we trace the development of geopolitical concept of the East. For a long time, the East of the Europeans was a Muslim land that are flooded with milk and honey. Isn't that interesting how they use milk and honey, Muslim land? Never mind, never mind. Okay, you should know that by now. The lands of 1001 nights. Okay, that's the Arabian Nights, by the way, and that of the great capitals of Jerusalem, Damascus, Baghdad, and Cairo, and their hidden treasures. For the Crusaders in the 12th and 13th centuries, kings, princes, knights, officers, soldiers of the East was a holy mission, a designated profession, and a long lasting career. The East for them was the land of the Holy Bible that must be captured and kept forever. When the Ottomans captured the Arab Muslim countries in the 16th century, the East for the Europeans became the lands of the Ottoman Turks, who, as well, capturing their western borders, threatening their existence. When the Europeans reached China and initiated their conflict there by the 19th century, they discovered the East was so big and that it extends beyond what they have known as the East. They then divided this vast East into the Near East, the one they already knew, and the Far East that they had just discovered. The British introduced a concept in the mid 19th century. They established their hegemony in India, which also separated India from Pakistan because they're the same country. But anywho, and it was the East that separated their homeland in Europe from their jewel of the crown. They then introduced the term Middle East to describe the area that extends from the Red Sea to the British Empire in India. So, did you know that technically the Middle East includes Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and India? Hmm. Wow. Very interesting, right? They looked to capture this Middle East to extend or link their empire from the European borders to the Indian subcontinent. Following World War I and the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the Middle East fell victim to British and French colonization. Both completed to establish their domination over the countries released from the Ottoman hegemony, and they succeeded to dominate the East till the end of the World War II. The Middle East proper is a geographical area that extends from the Nile Valley in the west up to the borders of the Soviet republics at the time in the east. This area traditionally included the following countries: the countries of the Arabian Peninsula, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Kuwait. The Fertile Crescent included Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, and then there was Turkey, Iran, Cyprus, and Egypt. Israel was created in 1948 and was considered a Middle Eastern country only because of its geographical position within the region, although it lacked all characters of Middle Eastern country in terms of the language, religion, and or shared history and culture, in spite of being rejected by all Arab nation countries of the region. In the French discourse, the term Middle East and Near East are used interchangeably and do not include the northern African countries. The French wanted to separate the Middle East that they shared with the British from the northern African countries, and they captured separately. Many American scholars and historians, nominate the Middle East on a wide regional sphere that extends from Morocco, that's Western Africa, all the way to Pakistan. So, and I'm not gonna, you know, I'm gonna give a little hint. If the Middle East goes all the way from Africa to India, you do understand that those Arab nations would be Semitic people too, and that would make the Africans Semitic people too. Ooh, there's gonna be a bloodbath. You know why? And I thought of this for so long, just even, thinking we under, we understand the region is Eden. And I'll do a lesson further, continuing the other ones that I spoke about. But it's just gonna be wild because once people realize this, and so many Arabs they claim themselves to be Asian. It's like you're not you're not Asian. These people are crazy. They and you know what? Those leaders who lie to them, they create these lines and say that, oh, this is, well, the Middle East has to be. Never mind, never mind. Let's continue. After the end of the World War II, with the beginning of the second half of the 20th century, the world witnessed the departure of the British and French from the Middle East and North Africa. The Americans sought to replace the British and French in the entire region, so they reclaimed their definition of the term Middle East to include all countries occupied by Britain and France together, i.e., the traditional Middle Eastern countries in addition to the North African countries. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, the United States became the only superpower, and this was the time of the Greater Middle East. Now, anyone heard of the Greater Middle East? Isn't that crazy, right? A term launched by Secretary of State of America Condoleezza Rice in 2004 to the GA countries in February of 2004 as a reform project to develop in the Middle East and Arab nations. The term refers to the 22 Arab nations that are members of the League of the Arab States, in addition to Cyprus, Turkey, Israel, Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, and therefore the new designation includes the traditional countries of the Middle East and North Africa, in addition to Pakistan and Afghanistan as well. Now, isn't it strange, right? They want to include places in Africa, but only North Africa, where a lot of the slavery happened through the Arab trade, slave trade, right? So you mean to tell me people in Libya, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, they all claim to be a part of the Arab nations, but you don't want to classify the other Africans. You see how the divide goes? They're all the same Semitic people. Once that happens, woo, I think that the Arabs will be very, according to the pseudographia, not many of them is going to survive because, well, look what you did. You got Africa starving. People are starving. They starting wars and warlords and stuff, and they're funding the weapons and different things. While your brothers on the other side of the ocean is just living good, lavish, right? It's lavish. Oh, the Most High said, what you've done to people, we're going to make sure it happens to you. It reads, these are the countries that America sought and is still seeking to impose domination and control over them, either militarily, politically, or economically. My, oh my. How the times never change. There's nothing new under the sun. The American plan to dominate the greater Middle East did not proceed for several reasons, perhaps the most important of which was the Arab Springs Revolution that erupted in 2010 and led to the fall of many of the region's rulers, of whom America was relying to impose its military and economic hegemony on their country. However, perhaps the opportunity led America to reimpose its control over the region after the earthquake of the new Arab Zionist normalization. The new Arab Zionist normalization that began in 2020 and the subsequent attempt to impose the so-called Abraham Accords on the peoples of the region that were quarreling, intersecting, and even warring. Here, America will not be the only leader in the new Middle East, but will share control with Israel, the historical first and the main enemy of the peoples of the region, at the same time, the first, closest, and most important friend of the rulers of those people. Full stop. So, we're starting to see something here. We're starting to see something here. Now, this article, I read this whole article, and they're refusing. They're refusing. But when you see that Sykes and Picot agreement, you understand why divide the Middle East? What's the reason for this? Well, because you don't want people to know that that is Africa. And if I have to say that the Middle East is Africa, then I have to state claim that the people of the book, the children of Israel, are not those people who don't look like anyone else in the region. Well, so let's just say this is Asia. Now, you ain't fooling me. There's a reason why the Arab slave trade is least spoken of. The least. You always talk about the black folks in America. They're talking about the the Atlantic slave trade, the West African slave trade, blah, 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 blah. No, no, no. Let's talk about something greater than that. Let's talk about the Arabs who are our brothers. Let's talk about why they won't let Africans in the Middle East unless they are servants. Let's talk about it. Let's just talk about the truth, shall we? Right? The greater Middle East. Look at this. Now, who knew? Because we all thought the Middle East was just Syria and Lebanon and Iraq, but the greater Middle East goes from West Africa, all the slave trading posts that they use for the and there's some countries like Libya, Tunisia, they still got slavery. Why do you think all those people are capsizing on them boats trying to get out of the slave countries still? Because in North Africa, they're still running slavery. Hmm. Oh, the Most High has sweet justice. And what they have done to others, he said, so shall I do to you. So, now, where does that come to light with, for example, Donald Trump in Greenland, Donald Trump in Venezuela? Now he's threatening Cuba, which is Cuba. So there have been all these deals, right? Once upon a time. Once upon a time, there were so many deals. We were just going to do deal after deal after deal after deal. Okay. But there was something special about the United States. There was something special. Now let's go to the book. Before I show you the article or the historical piece, I want to show you the scripture. So we're going to go to Revelations. Oh, it's about to get real choppy. Hold on to your seatbelts, okay? And watch this interpretation here, translation. This is Revelations chapter 17. Now, watch me read this now. Totally different from the King James. Watch me read this now. Okay? Now I'm going to break down things. This is Revelation 17. It reads, one of the seven angels that had seven bowls came to speak to me and said, come here and I will show you the punishment given to the famous prostitute, okay, who rules enthroned beside abundant waters, the one with whom all the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and who have made all the population of the world drunk with the wine of adultery. Now, let's look at these footnotes A, B, and C. The famous prostitute and all of that, right? So let's look. Chapter 17. The famous prostitute. A, Rome, type of any place where evil is supreme. Prostitution is a symbolizes idolatry. B, description of Babylon. And C, all pagan nations and their kings who have adopted the imperial cult. Well, Tucker Carlson said, what? What did he say? What, what, what did he say?
The United States has moved into the imperial phase.
Now, the United States has been in the imperial phase, sir, for quite the long time. Okay? Quite the long time. And I'm going to show you. Okay? But let's keep reading. It reads, he took me in spirit to a desert, and there I saw a woman riding a scarlet beast, which had 7 heads and 10 horns, and had blasphemous titles written all over it. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, and glittered with gold and jewels and pearls, and she was holding a gold wine cup filled with the disgusting filth of her fornication. On her forehead was written a name, a cryptic name, Babylon the Great, the mother of all prostitutes and all the filthy practices on the earth. And I saw that she was drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs of Christ. And when I saw her, I was completely mystified. And the angel said to me, don't you understand? Now I will tell you the meaning of this woman and of the beast she is riding with the 7 heads and the 10 horns. Now, this famous prostitute, which is this woman, right, who rules enthroned beside abundant waters. Now, let's look at the King James interpretation. Most people have this, right? Let's look at the interpretation, right? Who is this person? All right. This is the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Who is this person, right? Who is it? The beast you have seen once was, and now is, he is not yet to come up from the abyss. Now, I thought that was really interesting because It just says the beast that thou sawest and was not shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. It's kind of more catchy when you say the abyss, right? But only to go to his destruction, and the people of the world whose names have not been written since the beginning of the world in the book of life will think it miraculous when they see how the beast once was and now is not and is still to come. So, people who ain't going to the kingdom will be completely clueless. You've seen it there. You've seen it there. They that dwell on the earth shall wonder whose names are not. Now this changes, right? That they that dwell on the earth shall wonder whose names were not written. Now look at this. Look at those interpretations now. How crazy that is. And the people of the world whose names have not been written shall wonder whose names were not written. No, 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 no. That's two different messages. Only the people who are not written will be taken off guard. You see that? But let's keep going. That's why I tell you, leave that social media alone, all the distractions. Only the people whose names is not written in the book of life will be oohing and ahhing and wow, and that's crazy. Wow, wait. Those people, they would be the people who say, well, we got to get together and we got to show them we mean business and what are we doing? And I see people who claim to be in the truth, right? And they like I said, there's levels. They're in the worldly truth, and they be like, "Why are we doing anything? We got to get ourselves together, and we got to come together and show them we mean business." And I'm just sitting there like, it's so sad because some people could have come to the full truth, but they're not going to because that's as far as it goes for them, unfortunately. Here there is a need for cleverness for a shrewd mind. The seven heads are the seven hills, and the woman is sitting on them. The seven heads are also seven emperors. What? Seven emperors. Now, hold on, mister. Come back.
The United States has moved into the imperial phase of empire, leaving the republic, shifting to empire. And that's a pretty familiar life cycle for civilizations. And so we sort of roughly know what will happen. The first thing that's going to happen is that the energy and the power will vest in the executive and not the legislative branch. Congress will inevitably wither. It already is. They were not consulted before we took out the president of Venezuela. They had no role in this whatsoever. They have a constitutional authority here that was ignored, as it has been many times in the past. When was the last time Congress did something of note? It's been a long time. And that, if you take 3 steps back, is probably not surprising. That's the way these things go. The power moves to the executive, to Caesar or the president or whatever you call him, to the national leader. And that trend will accelerate over time for certain, not decelerate. And that has all kinds of implications, one of which is national elections are now everything. It's always
Now, thank you, Mr. Carlson. Oh, now let's go to something real quick. Okay, let's look up this word, emperor. A ruler, a leader. Okay, a commander. Right now, look up this word, empire. Okay, realm, dominion, so forth and so forth. Right, control, kingdom, blah blah blah. Okay. Now, remember in the beginning, It said, who rules enthroned. Let's look up that word. I mean, it's kind of important, right? Just for the FYI, right? Enthroned, to place a throne, exalt to the seat of royalty. What country would that be? I mean, it is just so hard. It's their 2026. It really is hard to see who wants to be the best country. Australia. Afghanistan. You know, um, Aruba. There's so many countries that just have so much power, right? That it's so hard to figure out. And Most High knows I hate sarcasm, but I'm trying to be funny here, as you probably all know. It's just so hard, right? You really couldn't see it. It's France, right? Don't you see it's France? No. It's South Africa. It's gotta be South Africa, right? Kenya? Yemen? Nah. It's definitely. It's Romania? Uh, India? No. Maybe it's Malaysia. Maybe it's Sri Lanka. Maybe it's Indonesia. Maybe they are the ones on all the waters, right? Maybe they're the ones who say they're better than every country. Indonesia first, right? And I'm going to invade your country because it's in our interest. And your country is my country, and my country is never yours, right? Oh, it's just so hard. Have mercy. Oh, Most High. Let me get back. Let me get back. Okay. Breathe, breathe. All right, continue. It reads number 8. The beast you have seen once was, and now is not yet, and he is not yet to come up from the abyss, but only to go to his destruction, and the people of the world whose names have not been written since the beginning of the world in the book of life will think it miraculous when they see how the beast once was, and now is not, and is still to come. Here there is need for cleverness, for a shrewd mind. The 7 heads are the 7 hills, and the woman is sitting on them. The 7 heads are also 7 emperors. 5 of them have already gone. One is here now, and one is yet to come. Once here, he must stay for a short while. The beast, who once was and now is not, is at the same time the 8th and one of the 7, and he is going to his destruction. The 10 horns are 10 kings. Wow. Who have not yet been given their royal power, but will have royal authority only for a single hour in association with the beast. They are all of one mind and putting their strength and their powers at the beast's disposal. And they will go to war against the Lamb, but the Lamb is the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. That's the Messiah, Christ, and he will defeat them, and they will be defeated by his followers. So it's going to get a little physical. Wow. Remember, I told you to be exercising and stuff because it's going to get a little physical. You're not going to endure to the end without getting physical. I'm just saying. But anyway, let me read that again. Maybe we should. Let's just clarify, right? These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. Now, For he is the Lord of lords, King of kings. They that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Now, notice how they take that out of the King James. They don't say that they will be defeated by his followers. Ooh, I think it was an emphasis to really take out, to let people know you're going to have to fight to be chosen. You can't just say, hey, here, here I am, I'm here, Most High. You're going to have to fight to be chosen. But anywho, don't take my word for it. They will be defeated by his followers, the called, the chosen, the faithful. Anywho, and the angel continued, the waters you saw besides which the prostitute was sitting are all the peoples of the are all of the peoples, the populations, the nations, and the languages. That's gotta be Nigeria, right? I mean, Eritrea, Somalia. I mean, Kuwait. Hmm, maybe it's Turkey. No, 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 no. Maybe it's Nicaragua. Panama. Maybe they go everywhere in the world, right? No, it must be Panama. I'm telling you. Maybe it's Japan. North Korea, Russia. No, I mean, no. China. I mean, they pretty big, but no, no. Man, it's just so hard to figure out who this prostitute is. But the time will come when the 10 horns and the beast will turn against the prostitute and strip off her clothes and leave her naked. Then they will eat her flesh and burn the remains in fire. In fact, God influenced their minds to do what he intended, to agree together to put their royal powers at the beast's disposal until the time when God's word should be fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city which has authority over all the rulers of the earth. Now, Nigeria, it is definitely Lagos, has all the power of the world. No, 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 no. It's got to be Caracas. Caracas, Venezuela, right? Bogota, Colombia, right? It's got to be. It's got to be. Come on. It, no, it's Haiti. It's Haiti. It has to be Haiti, right? Puerto Rico, Montreal, Canada. How about Montreal has all the power of the world, right? No, 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 no. It's Britain, right? It's Britain. I promise you, it's Britain. What joke? It's Alexandria, Alexandria, Egypt. Brothers and sisters, what great city has the authority over all rulers? And I contemplated this, right? Because I was like, Most High, this is interesting. This is my children when they were little, when things were like hot for them to eat, they would say, Dad, this is slicey. This is kind of saying like spicy, but slicey. So to me, this is like slicey. It's spicy, right? Who, which city has the authority over all the rulers? I'm waiting. It's Miami. You got to know that, right? Nah, maybe it's Dar al Salam, or maybe it's Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Dar al Salam is Tanzania. Maybe it's Tanzania. Cape Town, South Africa. What about Delhi, India? India got all the power, right? Shanghai gives authority to all people. Saudi Arabia, they give authority to all people. You see, the United Nations, they not only condemn rulers, but they put people in power to have control over the nations. And the United Nations is New York. Now, I said, Most High, wouldn't it be DC? And I do believe they are one and the same. So I believe that whole East Coast. Go bye-bye. Goodbye, bye-bye. Adios. Well, no, we don't want to say adios. We just want to say bye-bye. We don't want to see you again. Okay. No hasta mañana. No, no, no. We just bye-bye. Goodbye. Never see you again. Never see you again. When you sit there and think about it, I want you to think about it. Maybe you feel differently. Maybe, and I believe it's between the two. And I was like, you know what? Washington, D.C., but it's truly United Nations rules over the rulers of the world. And United Nations is their headquarters is in New York. I mean, their street is on 666, and then their address is 666, and you should see it on Google. It's wild. But anywho, so the United States, oh, the United States, right? I mean, brothers and sisters, you look at it like that, there may be a big problem. Now, you have the United States, you have the United States who is over the world. And the UN is stationed in the United States. And you wonder, right? And people are starting to question, what is the UN even doing, right? How are you going to be in the country that has done the most damage and not condemn the person who just invaded another nation? Well, this goes so far back, brothers and sisters. Something called the Monroe Doctrine. Did you know the Monroe Doctrine is a United States foreign policy position that opposes any foreign interference in the Western Hemisphere? So they say Donald Trump took over and he breaking the law. Yeah, brothers and sisters, boy breaking the law. Boy breaking the law. Originally concerning European colonialism, it holds that any intervention in political affairs of the Americas by foreign powers is potentially a hostile act against the United States. So, oh, wait, that means that gave them so called jurisdiction when Russia and Iran was bringing in military to Panama and to Venezuela. They were like, okay, that's a direct attack according to this. So they went in there. And that's why they keep saying they're not going to help our adversaries in our backyard. It's called the Monroe Doctrine. They've been scripting these things so they could do as they wish. Now, our brothers and sisters in the other parts of Americas, the Central and Southern America, most of them had no idea that the United States owns you. The United States owns those countries. Think about it. You touch any country in Central and South America, it's a hostile act against the United States, meaning go ahead and touch Chile, Paraguay. They're going to look at it as a threat. Means that country belongs to me. They just didn't say it. They let you have the culture. They let you have your own language. They let you have your own flag. But should you do something to any of those Hispanic speaking countries, you're doing something to me because I own them. That's America. So they own you silently. Oh, that's kind of crazy, isn't it? I'll put this in the description. Kind of crazy, so y'all can read it. But it gets even worse. Okay, it gets. And now this is National Archives. Now this is U.S. government. The government. Some people say government. Right? I think I had a cousin. He was older than me. He used to say the government. All right. Let's look at this. The annual message contained by the Monroe Doctrine, which warned European powers not to interfere in the affairs of the Western Hemisphere. Ooh, so the United States, you see, they were doing all those guerrilla warfares in the whole Hispanic countries. They say, yeah, I dare you to do something. This is my backyard. If I want to throw around these people, I'll do it. If I want to put drugs, I want to put gangs, I want to destabilize their countries, you can't do nothing about it. That's what they said. And look, all the ills of the brothers and sisters in Mexico, Central and Southern America, including the Greater and Lesser Antilles, what we call the Caribbean islands and the Caribbean waters, the territory, all those ills come from the U.S. Now, some of them, they say, okay, I think like the British territories own like the Virgin Islands or other islands or something like that. But other than that, their ills come from the U.S. Understandably, the United States has always taken particular interest in its closest neighbors, the nations of the Western Hemisphere. Equally understandably, expressions of this concern have not always been favorably regarded by other American nations. The Monroe Doctrine is best known. Let me blast this a little bit. Ay. That's too much. Sorry. The Monroe Doctrine is the best known U.S. policy toward the Western Hemisphere, buried in a routine annual message delivered to Congress by President James Monroe in December 1823. The doctrine warns European nations that the United States would not tolerate further colonization or puppet monarchs. The doctrine was conceived to meet major concerns of the movement, but it soon became a watchword of the U.S. policy in the Western Hemisphere. The Monroe Doctrine was invoked in 1865 when the United States government exerted diplomatic and military pressure in support of the Mexican president, Benito Juarez. This support enabled Juarez to lead a successful revolt against the Emperor Maximilian, who had been placed on the throne by the French government. Starting coups, huh? Anywho, almost 40 years later, in 1904, European creditors of a number of Latin American countries threatened armed intervention to collect debts. President Theodore Roosevelt promptly proclaimed the right of the United States to exercise an international police power. Huh? Say that again? Oh, wait. You said the United States was the police? Some people say the United States is not the international police. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And so the Most High says, you know what? If you don't want to get punished for what the international police do, you best believe the international police station, which is their country, which is their hemisphere, really. Mercy. To curb such chronic wrongdoing in his so called Roosevelt corollary or extension of the Monroe Doctrine. While the Monroe Doctrine's message was designed to keep European powers out of the Western Hemisphere, Roosevelt would strengthen its meaning to justify sending the United States into other countries of the Western Hemisphere. As a result, U.S. Marines were sent into Santo Domingo in 1904, Nicaragua in 1911, and Haiti in 1915, ostensibly to keep the Europeans out and kill the natives, right? Of course, and start gangs and all kinds of things, right? Drugs, all that, guerrilla warfare. Anywho, other Latin American nations viewed these interventions with misgiving and relations between the great colossus of the north and its southern neighbors remained strained for many years. In 1962, the Monroe Doctrine was invoked symbolically when the Soviet Union began to build missile launching sites in Cuba. That's why they're afraid of Cuba, because Cuba still has that history of being very close with Russia, Iran, and enemies of the United States. With the support of Organization of the United States of American States, President John F. Kennedy threw a naval and air quarantine around the island. After several tense days, the Soviet Union agreed to withdraw the missiles and dismantle the site. Subsequently, the United States dismantled several of its obsolete air and missile bases in Turkey. And yes, you can read the rest. So, brothers and sisters, this was, you're seeing their powers, right? Their powers, and more. More, right? There's always more, unfortunately. Now, I want to read this part. The bilateral statement proposed by the British thereby came as a unilateral declaration by the United States, as Monroe stated the American continents are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European powers. Monroe outlined two separate spheres of influence, the Americas and Europe. The independent lands of the Western Hemisphere would be solely the United States domain. So it's looking really scary for the whole Western Hemisphere, because guess what? What they did to Venezuela, they're going to do to the entire side. They're going to say, okay, everyone is shutting us down. Watch what happens, brothers. Watch. Mark my words. People going to see, they continue to see what they're doing in the Middle East. They're going to say, hey, we're going to put up a good fight. The Bible said that they would what? Uh, where is that? They would turn against him. The Bible said they would turn against him. It says the 10 horns and the beast will turn against the prostitute and strip off her clothes and leave her naked, and they will eat her flesh and burn the remains in fire. Now, once they realize they can't do nothing else in Africa and Europe and what they call the Middle East, but is Africa. Once they realize they can't do nothing there, oh, that's why they're going to the South American countries. Ding dong, wake up. And they're going to ravish it. They're going to ravish it. Okay. And I don't even, and I know people are, maybe you have heard about the weaponry that they used in Venezuela. I'm going to save that for another lesson. Don't you worry, because the U.S. soldiers, they weren't real people. They were super soldiers. and they had what the Arabs call the jinn. And they used the same thing that the Israelis were using and the Syrians and the Iraqis are using. They're using spiritual warfare. They had I don't want to get too much into it, but they had a weapon that made everyone ooze blood out of their mouth, their nose, their eyes, their ears, every crack that you had in your body, something was oozing. Shh, let's not talk about that. That's for another day, shall we? Another day. And when they start turning those weapons on to people, there's going to be no. What was that old school movie? Um, it was called The Warriors. They said Warriors come out and play. They used to say on the radio, "Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide." That's what the entire Western Hemisphere is going to be. Why? Because the Most High said the 10 tribes would move and it would be time for them to go from where they left to, which was the Americas, and making our way on back. Not everyone's going to make it, but if you're wise, you know what to do. Anywho, the independent lands of the Western Hemisphere would be solely the United States domain. In exchange, the United States pledged to avoid involvement in the political affairs of Europe, such as the ongoing Greek struggle for independence from the Ottoman Empire, and not to interfere in existing European colonies already in the Americas. By mid-1800s, Monroe's doctrine, combined with the ideas of manifest destiny, provided precedent and support for the U.S. expansion of the American continent. In the late 1800s, U.S. economic and military power enabled it to enforce the Monroe Doctrine. The doctrine's greatest extension came with Theodore Roosevelt Colliery, which inverted the original meaning of the doctrine and came to justify unilateral U.S. intervention in Latin America. And you were saying, "What? What's that?" Manifest destiny. Well, manifest destiny was that they believed that God said it belonged to them. You know how people make that joke where they say, "Oh, the Jews," they say, the Revelation 2 and 9ers, they say, "Oh, it was promised to us 4,000 years ago." That's what the manifest destiny was. It was them believing that God said they could expand their land despite who was there and kill and pillage anyone in their way. This is some sick people. That's law. Isn't it crazy? Don't you think? Manifest destiny. Coined sometime before 1820 is the idea that the United States is destined by God. Its advocates believe to expand its dominion and spread democracy and capitalism across the entire North American continent. And yes, that includes Mexico as well. And the philosophy drove the 19th century U.S. territorial expansion and was used to justify the forced removal of Native Americans and other groups from their homes. Because God told them so. The rapid expansion of the United States intensified the issue of slavery as new states were added to the Union, leading to an outbreak of the Civil War. And you can see, I'm not going to read all of this, but slavery, all the purchases, and all the different things that happened, right? Well, they believed that God wanted them to put people in slavery. They believed that God wanted them to kill. They believed that God wanted them to, that it was okay. You're dealing with sick people. It's really a land of devils. It's sick people. Those are some sick people. Let me tell you, some very, very sick people. Very, very sick people. Now, brothers and sisters, I got so much more. We haven't even gotten through all the scriptures. But have mercy, Most High. Most High, please don't be upset with me. I didn't get through, but we got through a lot. And I think the Most High just really wants me to just break this down so easily for you. So, with that being said, brothers and sisters, we're going to conclude part 2. This is the War on the True Promise, part 18, Mystery No More. What's the mystery no more? 1. Africa expands to the Middle East. Middle East belongs to Africa. And Africa is not even its name, but we're just going to go for that term. What is the other mystery? The nation to rule the world, the United Nations. DC, United Nations, all the same cup of tea. 2, whenever you see these people, aka the US government, invading and starting to invade and do things as they wish, you understand that secretly they believe God wants them to rape, ravish, loot, and steal from other people. That's what they believe, the manifest destiny. They believe this. It's in, remember, it says, the Bible tells us to raise up a child the way they should go, and they'll never depart. So if the United States was born, what they say, 200 years ago, right? We know it was more than that. But if they say, just for giggles, right? If the United States was a baby 200 years ago, you taught at the foundation that whatever land they want, they can take because what? It was manifest destiny by God. Now you're beginning to see that the American country is a true blasphemer of the Almighty. Or you say, you know what? I believe it is destined by God. I take your home. I believe that it's destined by God that I'm going to kill all the males and take all the women. I believe it is destined by God that I'm going to shackle you all and make you work for me for centuries. I believe. And remember, brothers and sisters, they believe in what they're doing. For those in the central Mexico, all the way on down, central Caribbeans, okay, the waters there, South America, you see the truth now. United States owns you. United States owns those countries. They would never allow the countries to flourish better than the United States because they want to take from you. They want you low to the ground, low as you can go. Probably, I would really say low as the abyss. So they want company right where they're going. With that being said, brothers and sisters, it's a mystery no more. And now that it's no longer a mystery, what do you do with the knowledge that was given to you? So